this is Gretchen Menn, the guitar player for Zepparella, and welcome to the Zepparella Learning Channel. This is the third video in a three-part series on the Led Zeppelin song Kashmir. If you're looking for the riffs, I covered that in the first video. If you're looking for adaptations I make to try to approximate sort of the denser sounds that are on the recorded version, that's in the second video. And this video is going to be on gear, sounds, and the very difficult structure of the song.
Studying the music of your heroes, whether it's Led Zeppelin or anyone else, informs your own musical vocabulary. Not only do you get the fun and education of playing music you love, there are deeper and more universal lessons to be gained along the way. Lessons that can make you a better, more well-rounded musician. My bandmates and I do these free videos as a way of sharing our love of Led Zeppelin and letting you in on what we've learned by studying the music and performing it live. We really hope this series may be helpful, educational, or interesting to others who revere the music as we do.
With Kashmir as the model, the two main points I want to emphasize here are to encourage you to play around with sounds, see what you can get out of your gear, and be creative about it. Some people get really into the minutia of what exactly was used on the recording and what Jimmy Page was using, and it's not really so much what I do. I try to use my ears, and then out of the gear that I have, because Zepparella, we load our own gear, we carry our own gear, I like to have minimal gear and get as much out of it as I possibly can. And the second takeaway is the concept of really figuring out how to learn and how to own complex, difficult song structures. I will start by addressing the elephant in the room. On the first two videos, I played it on the correct guitar, if such a thing is possible, of a Dan Electro, because that's what Jimmy played it on live. The reason I choose to play it on a Les Paul is a practical consideration. Most guitars don't even like to hold one tuning consistently, much less have to go back and forth between tunings. And the Dan Electro is certainly no exception to that. I keep that guitar tuned for In My Time of Dying, which is frequently in our set. And then I tune my backup Les Paul to Dadgad for Kashmir, and it's also my backup guitar should calamity strike my #1 Les Paul. So for practical purposes, I play it on a Les Paul. And if I had a problem with that sonically, I would deal with the tuning issues, or I would have a second Dan Electro. It's another guitar to bring, more gear to load. I need a backup Les Paul for sure. I can get through a set if something were to happen to my Dan Electro. That's just one song that we cut, but I have to have a backup for my Les Paul. So it worked out logistically, and most importantly, I think it sounds great on the Les Paul as well. So this is a 2003 limited edition Les Paul Standard. It's, I think the color's called like Manhattan Midnight or something like that. And just recently, like within the last couple of weeks, I installed these DiMarzio PAF 59s, which are virtually clones of Larry DiMarzio's original PAF 59 pickups in his 59 Les Paul. And I just did a thing with DiMarzio, and I found out when I was there that these are actually like the first in existence. So that's pretty exciting, but I'm sure they will not be the last, because not only are they rose gold and all special looking, but they sound great, which is really what's the most important thing. So really quick, because I know a lot of this is repeat for people who follow these videos, I use Ernie ball strings, 10 through 52s. I use Dunlop Jazz 3 picks. This happens to be a signature pick with a cool little avatar that somebody made for me. Usually on stage I'll use the Max grips, because stages get hot, my fingers get sweaty, and I want something to grab onto. But I use these as well. And then that goes into my pedal board. So my pedal board, I go into an Exotic Effects wah pedal, which is the closest thing I was able to find to the pedal that I had for years, which I abducted from my father, which was a mid-70s Dunlop Crybaby, and I loved it until it freaked out on me on stage, and then I had to get a new one. And that goes into a TC Electronics Polytune and into a Providence Silky Drive, which is a boost pedal that adds a little bit of gain. And then that goes into a Providence Phase Force phase shifter, which is an important one for this song in particular. That all goes in front of the amp. Yes, I know modulation often goes through the effects loop. I happen to like the way the Phase Force sounds in front of the amp. And then the only pedal I have in the effects loop is the Providence Chrono Delay. And I have that set for a bass delay time of 250 milliseconds and I switch between that and a longer delay of 450 milliseconds that I use more for solos or slower tempos. That all goes into my 2-Rock Bionics amp and cabinet. Absolutely love the 2-Rock. It has built-in reverb, wonderful gain coming right from the amp, and that's my main rig that I use at every Zepparella show other than fly-in gigs. So I use the phase force in a number of places throughout the song. You can find entire forums of people debating about whether it's this particular type of phaser or flanger, or however deep you want to go down that rabbit hole is entirely up to you. For me, the phase force sounds great. And so I use it in places where I hear the phaser on the guitar on the recorded version, and I also use it to differentiate different sections. For instance, when I play this other line within the riff, if you don't know what I'm talking about, video number 2 will describe it, but I'll show it to you here as well. And also to add just greater space and kind of a swooshy feeling within some of the choruses. Since we don't always in Zeppelin have clean and tidy verse-chorus bridges, for the purposes of what we're talking about today, we have what I'll call the main riff, or the verse, and I have the phaser on within the riff for that. I'll show it to you in a minute. We have the descending riff, where I turn the phaser on for that. And then we have the chorus and the outro, where I use the phase force there as well. First, within the main riff, when that other line comes in, I will step on the phaser to kind of differentiate that line and give it a different character from the main riff. So the way that would sound is... So I'm reaching for my pedals a little bit, but you get the sense is that it really does sound like another instrument kind of came in and keeps the riff and that line as feeling like separate entities. Another place that I use the phaser is in the descending riff. So. I will often use it in the choruses just to add a larger wash of sound. So the choruses being that G to A section, the and so forth. Some of these little adaptations you're hearing I cover in the second video, so if you're wondering, what are you doing? I explain it in the previous video. The last part where I kind of play with my effects would be in the outro, which is sort of that chorus section. And what I do is when that rising line happens, I go to my longer delay, I turn on my phase force, and then often I will step on my, my boost pedal as well to really have it cut through if I feel like it needs it on that particular night. So. The structure of Kashmir. I promise you, Kashmir is a beast, and I don't want to say everyone, but let's just say the number of times I have seen even some of my heroes or musicians I respect enormously underestimate the structure really drives home to me the idea that don't take it for granted. Zepparella actually implemented a no one gets to sit in with us on Kashmir policy because of how many people swore to us they knew the structure. And this is after we learned the song, so we went into rehearsal and we all had our weird little charts and, we spent a lot of time really trying to get it right, and we all scratched our heads and were like, whoa, this song's like way weirder than I thought. And so having come from spending the time to get it together, we were always a little cautious of like, you know that structure? You sure you know that structure? People are always like, yeah, no problem. And after pretty much 100% train wreck average, we were like, okay, no more of that. So that's just to say, don't underestimate the structure of Kashmir. It is way weirder than it seems. And I've actually included a chart that is my chart, or something like my chart, and I've put in red the places where I can almost predict that will be the difficult parts. It's because they're difficult for me, and places within Zepparella where a lot of times we'll give each other a little look like, hey, we know where we are, right? If you plan to perform Kashmir, write a chart. Don't just write a chart and memorize the chart, because I have yet to see somebody nail the structure of Kashmir without really investing the time to study it. As guitar players, we get, myself first and foremost, there's so much that can preoccupy us on the fretboard, and we have pedals, and there's so many things to be thinking about, and it's really easy to think, oh, I'll just cue off the vocal, or even if you're not thinking that consciously, even if you're just kind of thinking, oh, well, of course I know where I am. That drum has that fill, or the vocal has this. A part of playing in a band is not leaning on your bandmates, but being a pillar where if one of your bandmates is having a weird thing on stage, or a bad monitor, or somebody just dumped their beer on your pedals or something, where you can provide that solidity to them. So never thinking that you'll just cue off your bandmates is part, to me, of being a team player. Meaning, learn your structure if you're going to play this song. There are a number of factors that make this song so difficult to learn from a structural perspective. First, and certainly foremost, is it's a really, really long song. There's just a lot to remember about it. Secondly, it's like everything is odd. And at the same time, the tempo and the feel can kind of lull you into this feeling of like, oh, I'm just like sitting in with this groove. But behind the scenes, you're having to do like all sorts of mental math to be like, okay, wait, second verse just happened, we had 2 descents, and then we had the partial riff, and now we're gonna do that other one, and then it goes into that quick little turnaround, and then we're into the bridge. And it can be very difficult to stay alert in the way that this song requires. The number of times I have played this song, I couldn't even really venture a guess, and I still make it a point not to space out on Kashmir. Another part of what makes this difficult to memorize structurally is it plays upon our expectations. In Western music, we have been constantly programmed by, not everything, but by the vast majority of our music to feel and to expect things quadratically. So quadratically, that means in either groups of 4 or in multiples of 4. We have 12-bar blueses, 8 measures, 4 measures, 16 measures. Those are almost what we consider to be like units of time within music. We hear things as 4s or in 4s. And because Kashmir has this weird kind of polymeter going on, this 3/4, and then what that means in terms of number of measures, as well as things that are a clear number of measures, but then they have like 5 cycles through. It's this constant having to put your knowledge of the song above all of the programming that we've been exposed to through listening to music in general. So I will leave you with some of the strongest advice I will venture. I never want any of these videos to sound dogmatic, because our goal here is really just to share what we've learned in the process, and if it helps you, great, and if not, then no harm. But I will say, as strongly as I can ever advise, is if you intend to play this song live, chart it out. Like, for real, chart it out. Chart it out while listening to it, pausing it, and memorize the chart. Be able to know exactly where you are, know what happens between the 3rd and the 4th verse, and how many descending lines before this chorus or this bridge. By doing that, you will be able to play, I think, one of the most fun songs out there in the rock catalog, and you'll be able to do it without causing train wrecks. And this song is particularly difficult in a train wreck because the phrase length is so long in the guitar riff, and because of where it sits with the drums, it isn't like you just have one measure and you can get it back. Getting it back, ooh, it can be really brutal. So know your structure, chart it out, you'll be glad you did it, and have fun with it. It's a great song to be able to play. One thing I thought about covering, but I think Clementine does it so well, so check out her video on this, but I still need to mention it. This song to me is, in addition to all the other beautiful things it's about, is so about the feel of the song and feeling it with your bandmates. It's the tempo, the space within it. It's everything to be able to play well with your bandmates. And we as humans, no matter how consistent we might be, different nights feel differently, and to embrace that and be able to ride with the push and pull that naturally happens within the beauty of live music. So in approaching this song, okay, the first layer is you learn the parts and then you learn the structure. Don't neglect learning the feel, and don't be afraid to to sit down with your bandmates and say, let's just run this riff and this feel, and let's do it for the next 15 minutes, just with this one riff. The song will really benefit, and your enjoyment of really locking in will remind you why you've invested the time. As always, I like to give writing suggestions because writing is such an important part for me of my learning process. So I would suggest, with this particular lesson in mind, try writing something in a very unconventional structure. I think it's easy for us to have these expectations that songs follow very predictable set of song structures, and they work for, good reasons. But there's a lot that can be said by playing upon people's expectations and throwing a curveball once in a while. So I suggest you try writing something in a structure that might be counterintuitive. So good luck with it. Have fun. Thank you for checking these out, and we'll see you in the next series.